Welcome, everybody, to Big Dude Energy. I am Tommy Nicholson. I'm here with my co-host, the host with the mostest, Andy Nail. Andy, how are you doing today, buddy?
Doing okay. How you doing, Tom?
You know, trying to dig down deep to bring that big dude energy. Had a little low today and just feeling a little down, and I wanted to bring it up so we can do the namesake and have that big dude energy for our podcast. So
very nice. I'm feeling you there. I'm feeling you.
Yeah, sometimes you get older, you just don't have those days where you're just got that super big energy, but you got to find it. You got to find it deep, dig deep down. Last time we left off, and I had asked you a question about what is it to be a man, and I wanted to preface it with that question alone has changed since I've started to think about it. Yeah. And I have a lot of younger nephews. I have friends with kids that are like nephews to me and nieces, and I wanted to set a good role model as a lot of them come into adulthood and manhood. And so I've been kind of thinking, what does it mean to be a man, and masculinity, and then I got into femininity, and I don't know where I landed. Well, I have an idea where I landed, but I wanted to ask you what in this society that we're in now, and the times we're in now, and things have changed. What do you feel like it is to be a man in our society, or what defines that?
I have no idea, and I think that's actually a good thing. Growing up in very conservative religious background, there was very specific gender roles. A man does this, a woman does that. This is what it means to be a man. You dress like this. You are the main breadwinner. You don't talk about your feelings. You don't cry. The term "man up" was used so much growing up, which I hate that term so much. People say "man up" because what they mean is, don't be a sissy, and that's what I was told as a kid. And don't show your emotions, don't show your feelings. And for me, having walked away from that culture, I am just gender and gender roles and what it means to be a man or a woman, and traditional gender roles and non-traditional gender roles at all is just kind of like I'm rediscovering it, honestly.
Sure. And I think you need to be, we all need to be learning every day as the world changes. What if you're not getting better, if you're not going forward, you're going backwards, kind of thing. I mean, we all obviously know the old traditional things, and I grew up in Boston and south of Boston, and there was what it meant to be a man, and then terms of sexuality with derogatory terms like that being used as our regular vernacular. And, you said sissy. Well, the P word referring to female genitalia was often used and is still used. And which the more I've thought about this word, the more ironic it is, because who has the most sensitive genitalia?
Yes,
is men.
I knew you were going to go there.
Where you get a shot in the genitals of the male, and you become a little child. You go into the fetal position and you cry. Yeah,
what's funny? Yeah, what's funny is when you don't act like a man, people will say grow a pair. And you're like, what the heck?
Two of the most sensitive things in the world. You don't want, And on the other hand, female genitals are like this amazing, tough. They give childbirth and then they come back. They all this crazy things that to call someone that P word in reference to that, it's so backwards, right?
It is.
It's
it
like,
really is.
And first of all, we shouldn't be using that sort of stuff anyways. You can talk about brave and not being brave and being afraid and being scared. But when you go into that sissy and all these other things, but I've always found it so ironic that that's the word we use, because that's one of like the toughest things in nature is that, and the most sensitive thing is males. So one of my conclusions, and I would not even conclusions, but all right, what does it mean to be a man now? Okay, it's to I have rules in general as I started thinking of them of like, what does it mean to be a human? And then what does it mean to be a man?
Hmm.
But as I was going there, I realized it's really just what it's to be a human.
Yeah.
It it doesn't matter. We put all these other things on it. So that's my answer. It's, what it is to be a man is the same as what it is to be a human. I was going to get
Yeah.
cheesy and say human. Um, but but yeah, what is, what does it mean to be a good human being? And I think that's all that it is. It's, taking care of your family. Well, both genders should be taking care
Hmm.
of their family,
Yep.
number one.
Yep.
And the female gender has, the motherly things that they say. And so to man up is, for a man, is to take care of your family. What, financially? But why not emotionally? Why is that the woman's job? And now that
Yeah.
we're understanding gender a little more, and it's fluidity,
Yep.
that
Yep.
it's just what it is to be human. So now I ask you the question: what does it mean to be a human? And I mean, like, in the way of, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a good person? Is it holding doors to the other gender?
I on that specifically.
Or just in general, but
So
yeah.
like, my wife and I, we've been married 17 years now. In a lot of ways, and we've always said this, even when we were in more of a conservative culture, we don't fulfill the stereotypical gender roles. For the longest time, she was the main breadwinner. I stay home with the kids for a long time, and other things, just the way our relationship works, the way we relate to one another. But like, she likes it when I open the door for her, and I'll
Hmm.
do the car door, the front door. She enjoys that. My daughter, on the other hand, very much, my youngest daughter, she's 11, very much smash the patriarchy. I don't need anyone to help, and I'll do that. I would do that for her. And recently, she's like, "Dad, I know why you're doing it, and I appreciate it, but it's not for me. So let me open the door for you sometimes, or don't." And that's what her way of empowerment. And for every individual, every relationship, it is different, and that's okay. And if you are a person who identifies as a woman and you want your significant other to open the door for you, and that's something you've worked out, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And if not, that's fine too. Um, Gender is so fluid. Gender roles are a societal construct that we have put together as a society over thousands of years. And whatever works for you is great. Because traditional gender roles kind of screw things up for a lot of people, especially women.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the picture that's going to wrap everything that specifically we would be talking about, holding doors or doing that, is it's thinking about the people around you in a
Hmm.
wide net, thinking about the people you're with and what they would want, and just acknowledge the people around you. I wish people in our society acknowledged the people around them more. And I'm talking about driving, walking, strangers, your loved ones. Think about the people around you, and how can you adjust your behavior to make them comfortable, or if you love them. But even just a stranger, like, I'm a big guy, and as are you. I am so aware when I'm in a grocery store or when I'm
Yep.
around people. My size. I'm trying to dodge people. I don't like to go in small grocery stores where the aisles are really small. On airplanes, I'm super cognizant of the people
Hmm.
around me, and I'm trying to make them more comfortable. I'm not saying everyone needs to be super, but you need to understand there's other people around you that are human beings,
Yeah.
and whether it's opening the door for somebody, I it doesn't matter what gender they are. If they have their hands full and you're there, you're paying attention. Pay attention to your surroundings. Pay attention to the people around you, and try to help out. And I think that's going to be a theme that comes through with all these
Hmm.
little details, is just trying to understand the people around you and their feelings. And I know there's a whole, pendulum too far thing. And I acknowledge that, a lot of comedians these days are talking about it, and the over wokeness of things. And, I'm sure there's examples of the pendulum going too far, but it needs to go in that direction,
Yep.
in order to
Yep.
get to where we need to be as a society. Because I am a crier, and I think we talked about this in the first episode. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
cry. I easily cry. Lately, I've been crying when I'm really happy, which is a new thing. And I'm not talking about like tear. I'm like full well up, sinuses going, tingling, just being happy or being around somebody that I love, or and crying was a big deal when I grew up. I was told not to
Yeah.
cry. I was told that, be a man, and big boys don't cry, and it was hard because I wasn't in control. I
Yep.
just start crying. I am not in control of my emotions that way, where if I'm really happy or I'm really sad, my eyes are going.
Hmm.
It's just
It's I never, to this day, still don't understand that, because having going to therapy currently, I see how beneficial that is and how much harm there is in suppressing those things, and not dealing with emotions, not being allowed to feel. You know, you push those things down. It's like a dam. If a dam gets too much water behind it, what's going to happen? And it eventually is going to break. They're eventually going to be damaged. That's why you go to Hoover Dam outside Las Vegas. They release some of that water. Otherwise, if they don't, it'll get higher and higher and higher, which right now it needs to be because there's a drought. But you understand the analogy that there has to be pressure release. There has some way to get your emotions out, and that's a healthy and good
yep.
thing, to
And
do
that
that.
pressure, the pressure building up as a kid is, as a boy, you were told to not have those emotions, and I think that that leads to exactly what your metaphor was, is to building up. And I think we need to release those emotions. I went from being told not to cry to, you know, my dad was a very typical father at the time, and he wanted to raise a right person. And at the time, that was the thing. It was be tough, and I think you can be tough and cry at the same time.
Yeah.
So to go around and to say so. Oh, I guess my point was, now I see my dad, and he's a much different stage in his life as he's older now. And sometimes when I come home and I give him a hug, he's crying. And this was the man that was telling me that I shouldn't be crying as a boy, and now he is. And it actually makes me feel good that he's came a long way
That's
with
good.
feelings and emotions, and because the generations before us were told to shut them down, and it's
Yep.
just so unhealthy. So now when I think, okay, what does it mean to be a man? It means the same to be a human, and see, I knew I'd slide it in there. And what does that mean? That means taking care of the people you love?
Mhm.
That means saying I'm sorry. Okay, this is a
Mhm.
big thing. This is
Yep.
hard for people to do, or to say I was wrong. And
Yep.
sometimes I do those things just to move on. If I know I'm not going to get somewhere in an argument, I will just say, you know what, I'm sorry, and I'm not perfect. And most of the time, I genuinely am if I do something wrong. But sometimes you say that, then you can move on because
Yep.
it's people's injustice. But so I think that's what it is to be a human, is to say when you're wrong. Say
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Take admission of your mistakes.
I want to go back to something you were talking about before, how you're very just self-aware as a male, as a bigger dude. I'm obviously, a big part of my platform is being in the outdoors and hiking. Um, I am so cognizant of, especially I'm hiking and there's a woman in front of me, and she sees me coming. What all she sees is some big dude coming. Doesn't know anything about me. Doesn't know if I'm safe, if I'm not safe. Being aware of that, and not just women, but I do know that there is,
And not
for a
being not
lot of,
being offended. Don't be
not being
offended
offended by
that
that. Yeah.
she is aware of your presence, because
Yeah.
that's a survival instinct that is our fault, not
And that's
ours,
something
but
I didn't realize until I was, and this goes into race as well. I was hiking alone, and I was hiking alone up a waterfall. I got in the waterfall and I was coming back, and there was this point in the hike where there's like a place you could take a picture. And you turn this corner, and it's a beautiful part of the waterfall. And there was this biracial couple there. Big dude, I had a trucker hat on. They see me, and instantly there was no one else around. I saw fear in their eyes, because they saw me, and they did not know if I was a safe person. And just it hit me. I'm like, so instantly I went into, I became overly nice. Hey, can I take your guys' picture for you? It's a beautiful waterfall, and just kind of diffuse the situation. But from that point, I realized being on the trail, being a larger white dude, you know, the people, women, people of color, there is a appropriate amount of fear that I need to learn not to be offended by. It's like, yeah,
Hmm.
if I was in their position, I might be afraid too.
Hmm.
Probably would be. And just
Yeah.
learning to not be offended by that, that is the reality of the culture we're in. And to learn to be an ally and learn to overcompensate and diffuse those situations by just being a decent human being.
Being a decent human being. It's that empathy aspect of
Mm-hmm.
how
Yep.
how am I making this person feel?
Exactly.
And it may be unintended, but I feel like as a plus size person, you are I'm way more aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, I'm just a big guy, and you know, I'm aware of how I make other people feel physically, and you have to be that mental aspect too. And you're exactly right. You have to swallow your pride and say, how are these people interpreting the situation?
Yep.
Now I know
Yep.
I'm a good guy. Most people that know me know, but these people don't.
They don't know. Yeah, they don't know me. They don't
And
know me.
if they are, apprehensive, it's probably because they've been through some trauma.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a trauma response from lived experience, and that's okay.
Hmm. And so again, this all goes back to being empathetic to the people around you, to being aware of the people around you. And I'm not saying go the far direction where you're just walking around making sure everyone's comfortable. No, but understand your surroundings, understand how you affect your surroundings. I think is important. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things you talked about, and we don't talk much about it, but is traditional gender roles. In my house, I do the cooking and cleaning, and
Mm-hmm.
um, my partner works a lot, and I am there to support her when she's working and do everything I can. I call it smoothing the pavement in front of her, you know,
Nice.
and so it's I still work and I have jobs, and I'm an actor and I work as a production manager and all that. But this whole machismo thing of I need to protect. It's not that. It's people need to feel emotionally
Yeah.
safe with each other. It doesn't matter the gender.
People think of Oregon as a very, very progressive state, and as a whole, we are, because we have this big liberal city right up in our northwest corner called Portland. That is, the vast majority of the population. Where I live in Southern Oregon, while there is a lot of hippies and stuff, it is much more conservative, and people get scared. For instance, a big thing in the school districts right now here is when teachers at the beginning of the school year, it's like, "Hi, my name is Mrs. Smith. Pronouns they, her, they, them," or the fact they even mention pronouns. People freak out, like it's ridiculous. Um, and people are like, "Oh, you're chipping away at gender. You're trying to." One thing you hear in school districts here in school, different meetings, is you're trying to make everyone gay. You're trying to make everyone trans. And it's like, I look at things like pronouns. It's just an acknowledgement that this is who I am, and this is how I'd like to be referred to, and that's decent. That's just dignity and respect, referring to someone how they want to be referred to. And like for me, I all my stuff I put he him on all my bio stuff, so people are, not only know those are my pronouns, but for a person who is LGBTQ, they see that, like, they don't know me, but they can get an idea, like, oh, this may be a safe person,
It's
just
an
the very
ally
fact
flag.
it's
It's
an
like an
ally
ally
flag.
flag. Yeah.
It's like saying, oh, he's putting his pronouns out there. you know he's not like, you get these other profiles that my pronouns are carnivore and whatever, some stupid crap. They're trying to belittle the idea
Yeah.
of pronouns. And we see this divide in big city and rural America, where there's just not this understanding about what, no one's trying to make your kids gay. Like,
Yeah.
no one,
No,
because you
they're
don't make your
trying
kids gay.
to.
They are or they aren't.
Yeah, you're
Like,
trying to allow if your kid is gay to feel comfortable
exactly,
because traditionally people couldn't come out with that, and then they
exactly.
hold it in, and that dam breaks, and there's high suicide rates, and they feel crappy about
Homelessness,
themselves,
yes,
and drug abuse, and all these things that can stem from that, and
yep,
so yeah. And I think we'll eventually move past the he him things, but we have to work out the pronouns now, and this is how we're going to work them out, saying these are mine in case you weren't sure, you
yep,
know, and that's it. And it's really a flag to other people saying, let me know, because
yeah,
maybe I don't know. And
yeah,
I grew up with somebody that was a girl that was very athletic and very sporty, and was one of the boys. And I wish it was a different time, because I would have understood more than I did then. But I was always, glad to have them there. But I just I see people that couldn't be their selves, and I hope now
yeah.
kids do feel like they can be themselves. I had a friend of mine that had a baby girl, and I babysat her for the first 3-4 years of our lives, and she moved. My friend moved back east from after being in LA. And a couple years later, I said, "Oh, how is she?" And she goes, "Oh, she is now a boy, and he's doing great. He's really good." And I was like, "That was the first transgender person that I've ever met."
Hmm.
And this was someone that I watched that doesn't know me now, but when they were very little, I would
Yeah,
babysit, and it made me happy that they were at a school system that understood it and that
yeah,
accepted the name change and the pronouns. And then I met him. I think he was 17 or 18 years old the first time I met him, and I was just blown away. That was their authentic self,
yeah, yeah.
and it really changed me on how I looked at this, because first of all, there's not two genders in nature.
Nope,
Why do we
nope,
think that it would be that way? Why do we think we're the exception?
yep, yeah,
And we're
yeah.
not.
It's fluid, and it's people can argue either way, and it's infuriating that it's even an argument, just to let people be
Why
themselves.
do you care so much? That's what I
Yeah,
say. Why do you care so
yeah,
much? How is it affecting you?
exactly. How does someone, using they them pronouns, transitioning, whatever, how does that affect you? One thing I've always said to people who said, I'm against gay marriage, we need to outlaw gay marriage. I'm like, no, we need to outlaw gay marriage. If you don't like gay marriage, don't get gay married. Like,
Yeah.
it's that simple. It doesn't affect you. Well,
Yeah.
we're breaking down the stronghold of the family and what it means. Like, no, it's a
No,
marriage is a social construct as well.
we're creating more
Exactly.
families.
Exactly.
It's tough. And I did see a clip of I don't know how old this is, but the former Texas governor was a female, and she was on a panel somewhere, and abortion came up, and she said, "Look, you can have your own values, and you can think it's wrong, but you don't have the right to tell somebody else what to do."
Hmm.
You can have whatever religion and beliefs you want, but the minute you try to put it on other people, or you try to create laws, I mean,
Hmm.
the found everyone wants to talk about the founding fathers when it comes to guns or any other things. They literally wanted a separation of church and state. They created that term. Like,
Yeah.
they didn't want our laws being based around any sort of religious values. We want them over common sense things, good for the community things.
Yeah.
Then individual communities and churches can deal with those small things, but you can't legislate against somebody's body.
It's
It's absurd.
exact. Yes. Yes. And it's infuriating, but having been in that culture, that super conservative culture, I'm always trying to make sure that I am remembering a lot of people who are fighting that fight against, you know, gender equality, marriage equality, autonomy of someone's body. They really are scared because they've been told by a religious leader, by their family, by their parents, by the media, certain media outlets, that this is an existential crisis, and then they are coming for your kids. They're coming for you, and this will destroy the country that your ancestors fought, bled, and died for, and they truly believe it. And so, for me, when I was a conservative, when I was, not that this is a political show, but when I had a very conservative, more traditional mindset when it came. I mean, I was a pastor. I was an evangelical, conservative evangelical Southern Baptist pastor. For gosh dang it, I mean, it was the kindness of others, especially in the LGBTQ community, who, despite the fact that I was a closed-minded bigot, still showed me love, still showed me kindness, and were so patient with me when I began to ask questions. And not that was what every person needs to do. You know, everyone's going through their own journey. Everyone has to have the spoons to do that. I understand that. But there were certain individuals who really just took the time and was patient with me and answered my questions. And my opinions began to change about the LGBTQ community. I'm like, wow, they're not these monsters that Fox News makes them out to be. They're really cool. I want to go hang out with them. And
Yeah,
mine began
yeah,
to change.
and you know, I have nothing against religious conservatives. Like, live your life and vote for the people that you want to that are legitimately going to make things better for everybody.
Yep.
I like, let's stop making things better for the white man. And
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't use that term derogatory. I just said all of our laws have been written and voted on by white men. Like, we need to start thinking of other people that live in this country, other
Mm-hmm.
Americans. You want to say you're a patriot? Then yes, you should. If you have a strong conviction in your faith, great. Don't use that to hold down another community, though.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's to, you want to uplift everybody.
Yeah.
Our country has many different religions, and our founding fathers specifically didn't want religions to be making laws.
Yep.
They
Exactly.
wanted
Exactly.
the will of the people, right? The majority, not
Mm-hmm.
the minority that holds the power. And that's the only way we're going to get there, is to bring people into politics, get people in, CEOs, minorities and women running things. And it's slow to happen, but it's happening. But
It,
it's not an attack on the white male. You just have to think, how is this, how am I affecting other people? But it's
yeah.
not an attack on us. It's, we need to turn around and say, you know what? The weather is nice up here. Let me help you get up here. Like, and not
Yes.
in a I'm better than you, but I have some built-in privileges. Let me help you and level the field a little bit.
That's one thing. I was in film school. I was in film school during the me in the midst of the Me Too movement. So this is a conversation we were having a lot of, and we talked a lot about leverage. So the college I went to was one of the most liberal colleges in Oregon, and we had a lot of really open conversations about how those of us with privilege can leverage our privilege to even the playing field. Because bottom line is, as a straight white male, I get into places in my career that my friends who are women, people of color, who are queer folks cannot or do not or just get overlooked. So if I'm running a production, if I'm key PA on something and they say go get more PAs, I'm gonna find my friends who are queer folk, who are people of color, who are women, to come beside me and do this. And I know that most of them will do a better job than I could about it, because
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a handout, it's not a leg up. It's realizing, what, if people who have the privilege don't leverage it and do the right thing, things will never change. That's why we have equity and equality. Hires at not hires, but people who are part of an equity and equality department within HR departments and things of that nature, to make that happen. Because even like in Hollywood, the system, like for so long, the systems were if you wanted to get into production, you have to become an intern first, which means you're not paid in a lot of these positions. Well, who are the people who can afford to live in LA and New York and not be paid? Rich kids. Who are the majority of these rich kids? They come from affluent white families. And so
Which I heard the term independent wealthy the other day, and I think that's such a backwards term because it really means that you are not independent, you're wealthy because of a parent. But that
yep,
independently, oh, that person's independently wealthy. And it's like, well, because they come from money. That's not independence, that's dependently wealthy. But go on.
yeah.
Sorry, I just.
Oh no, yeah, exactly, exactly. And so we have to break those cycles, like by making sure that we don't do free or unpaid internships anymore in the entertainment industry and other industries, that you get paid for your work. Um, because people who are in other socioeconomic classes can't afford to live in New York and LA for no money. And so those interns do the work. They start working as a second AD or whatever. They get hired on because they had that first opportunity, and that's all industries. I talk the entertainment industry because that's what we're familiar with. And so these things just have to change. And I know maybe I'm not stating it eloquently enough,
No, I
but
get it.
our heart is here that we want to see change, um, because overall there's a saying that rising tide raises all ships, and that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Rising tide
and
raises all
and
ships.
in this business too, being in behind the camera production for 20 years, if I gave somebody a chance that otherwise wouldn't, and a lot of times they would rise above me and then they would hire me on the next
Mm-hmm.
job, and it's always
Yep.
it's
It's
always
who you
that.
know in
and
this
and
industry.
yeah, yeah. So if you can elevate people, they'll never, they won't forget that you gave them their chance. It's good
Mm-hmm.
for you to create those opportunities, because those people, they could be giving you opportunities in the future. And often they do, especially in this
Yep.
industry. So,
Yep.
I hear a lot of, well, why do I need to see a bunch of commercials with LGBTQ or mixed race or men doing the laundry and women? Like, why do I need to see this on TV? And it's usually older generations. And I I always struggle to say the right words, but it's, my main defense is, well, exactly, is why not? Why not them? But
Yeah.
also, there were so many years that there wasn't any representation. And
Mm-hmm.
so, oh, well, you gotta jam it in my face. Every Hallmark movie has to have two guys kissing. It's gonna be jammed in my face. No, it's just, it needs to get to a point where it's just two people kissing.
Yep.
And we need to get there, but we need some training wheels on how to get there. I hope we get
Mm-hmm.
to a point where we don't need a diversity counselor in HR, or we don't need pronouns, or it's, we get to the point where we don't need to, because there's not such an imbalance of power to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we're there yet. I think we've gotten close, but
We got a long way to
sometimes
go.
it
Yeah.
feels like it's two steps forward, one step backwards. And that's frustrating, especially with trans issues and LGBTQ and their rights.
And there's
I,
so
I
many
just,
laws in so many states trying to restrict those rights right now. I think of my friend Cal, who they're trans, and Cal is amazing. Cal ran across the country to bring awareness to the legislation that's happening state by state to restrict access to healthcare, restrict access to education, and social services, and all these things. And it's so disheartening, while you have states like Oregon as a whole, California and New York beginning to make strides. Not that we have arrived or anything, and other states trying to pull back rights. Um, it's absolutely infuriating because there's been so much fear mongering going on, and it comes down to the fact that people want to hold on to power, they want to hold on to influence, um, and they're scared they're going to lose it because there's
yeah,
no other
and
reason why you
no,
why wouldn't you want everybody to be equal?
yeah. When you stop reacting to two men kissing on TV, is the
Mm-hmm.
time that maybe, it won't matter. And that's what we're trying to do, is
Yeah.
to get you to understand these things, so that they're not a rare sight or something that, all this stuff was told to be done in the closet. Well, don't do it. Just don't do it in front of me. Who cares? Do it in front of me.
Yep.
That's the whole point, is to give them opportunities to be in commercials, right? We should have these, but a
Yep.
lot of advertising companies have this diversity agencies, or they have specifically diverse things. And I understand that now. I just look forward to a time when we don't need a diversity agency, because it'll just be the agents. Like, it'll just be okay. And I get like the culture thing. We talked about that Denzel Washington thing about, have the culture speak to the culture that you're trying to get to. I completely get that. And that's the way it should be. But I look forward to a place where we won't have all of these. We don't need these people to, we have a new thing on set, which is intimacy coordinator.
Yeah, we have that here at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. Yeah.
That position just popped up out of nowhere. I remember before there was even rules about this, I don't know, this is 15 years ago on a movie, and we were doing it all in one long shot. And it was like going to be 10 minutes, start with them on the couch. They were going to go to the bedroom. They were going to make out. So we were on the other side of the house. So something went, these were just two people and a cameraman, right? So if something was going on, I couldn't judge the actor's face or the actress's face, because I couldn't see off camera. If they weren't on camera, I didn't know. So I sat down and I laid out everything we could and couldn't do based on what they wanted. And I had a great dialogue with them, and we wrote it down and we signed it. And I stapled it to the calls, to our paperwork. And I said, look, okay, because I want actors to have the freedom. I'm not saying you have to do these things, but what is the no for you? And now it's a whole position, and it's so needed on a film set, because people are in a vulnerable state on a film set, and they want, there's that whole power of be able to make or break someone's career, and they're feeling like they have to do things, and you need someone just to, same with kids. I don't know if you saw this Nickelodeon.
I'm watching it right now.
Gosh, it's just heartbreaking.
What happened, Nickelodeon?
I mean, it's just. But look, you look at some of these episodes, and we look down. We're like, oh, they put that on camera, right? They did a skit like that, squeezing the water out of a potato, or like the juice out of it. Like, now it's so cringeworthy, but at the time, I may have saw that and never gave it a second look. And we just need to adjust to the times, and just say things like, well, in my day, it wasn't a big deal. Well, maybe it should have been.
Yeah.
And just because you grew up one way, and this was a big thing when I moved to LA from Boston, with the words I used, right? I don't know if I say these words or I just reference them, but like the R word, referring to, I'll just say it, retarded. You're not, so, in that aspect of it, in the lingo, it just rolls off the tongue with a Boston accent, like calling someone a retard, or saying someone's retarded, wicked retarded. It was just pot. And when I first went to LA and someone's like, you shouldn't say that, I'm like, that's a word that I used growing up. Like, now you're like, you're judging my culture. And then one day I was like, what am I talking about? If that offends somebody, don't say it. Who cares that I used to say as a kid? I used to say a lot of stupid shit as a kid. You got to grow over it. And you can't have this weird sense of pride of like, well, because I grew up with it, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if you can see that one of the books over my shoulder is The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. And it's like, just because we were told something, oh, the Columbus was a hero and all that. Oh, well, now you're rewriting history. Yeah, right. It turns out he was a terrible human being. Terrible. Yeah. And he didn't think he was going to fall off the face of the earth. Yeah. And it's like, well, I need to understand that the information has changed, and not be so rooted in my pride of where I grew up and what they say when I was in school, and say, look, they were wrong. Some of them didn't know they were wrong, and some of them did, but they were wrong. And it's okay to be wrong.
It's okay to turn around. It's okay to change. It's okay to realize you were making mistakes. And I also want to acknowledge the fact I realize that we are saying this as two straight white dudes who we're both plus size. We talk about plus size representation in media a lot, but we still have privilege, and can talk about this freely, having privilege because of our maleness, our straightness, and our whiteness. We have that privilege.
I tell you, one thing I've noticed, and I've been talking a lot about it to my partner. We were in Cabo on vacation recently, and this is our third time being at that hotel in 2 years. People they recognize me from the last time I was there. There is a privilege that comes with being a large person. And I'm smiling because it makes me happy because people recognize me. They're like, oh yeah, yeah. Like they, where they otherwise I don't blend in with everybody else.
Hmm.
For the longest time in my childhood, that was like a liability.
Yeah.
Being the one that everyone can see, like
Mm.
my faults are visible to everybody. And there's nothing I can do. I've been trying to change these things about my size. And I never felt like myself until I got older and I realized that. But then I realized it, like everything, it has a superpower to it, and people are much more recognizable. When
Hmm.
people see me come into a room and they've met me before, there's a presence there. And that's just as much a privilege as anything else. And
Yeah.
that's a positive privilege, I think, of being a big guy, considering all the crappy things that come with it.
Yeah.
Um, but I laughed the other day thinking of, well, that's technically a privilege, but and do you think being a big guy, and I already know the answer to this, but I guess how would I get into it is being a big plus size guy or girl has made you more aware in other circumstances and in other communities, or was that just a maturity thing? Like for me, when I moved to LA and I was saying all these words and using homophobic slangs because I
Hmm.
grew up with them
Yeah.
and I had to adjust. That wasn't necessarily about my size. That was me just growing up. But are there
Yeah.
any built-in things that you feel like just from being a big person that you've always, even before you were mature enough to see it?
I think I've always been a little bit more sensitive because having, been teased for my size my entire life, been plus size my entire life, always been more sensitive to others because of who they are, how they look. Um, Even as a conservative pastor, I was always very, very had some sympathy in me for the LGBTQ community, especially as I began to have some in the gay community as friends and really kind of listen and really like, oh, that experience on a certain level I can relate with that. Like not to the same level, absolutely not. I don't want to say that, but having been ostracized because of my size, because of who I am. Obviously, not to the same level. So many of my friends in the LGBTQ community were disowned by their family, especially if they came from an evangelical conservative background, homeless, that with drug abuse because of it. Things I've never had to deal with before. Um, and so, yeah, I think there is that, but I think also there is a level of maturity that at one point I had to be like, I need to leave this culture that I'm in, this leave my career. It just happened over time because my religious pursuit was more about being a decent human being and being who I was created to be. And in that journey, I realized these beliefs are toxic and they're hurting other people, and I can't
Yeah,
continue to
and they're not
espouse
helping
them.
you.
They're
Yeah.
not helping me at all. They're actually causing me more anxiety. Um,
Because
so
they're
a
creating
little of both.
anger to have that anger inside of you and that anger towards somebody or that hatred that is really doesn't come from any real place. There's just
Mhm.
someone told you should be mad at. That festers
Yeah.
inside people. That is so toxic to your own health to have
Mhm.
that anger, that so much so that we mentioned earlier, the laws being changed, it makes me so angry. Even that kind of anger, I want to figure out how to channel that into something positive, right?
Yep.
It's just like when you said, the LGBT community were there to ask to answer your questions, and they
Yeah.
weren't mad at you, right? They weren't just like, you're a pastor in a super religious conservative world and you don't understand. They didn't leave you behind. Which, by the way,
Yeah.
as much as I know from the teaching of Jesus, that's one of them,
Yeah.
is to
And they had every
love
right
thy
to. And they
neighbor.
had every right
But
to.
they still didn't. Yes.
Yeah. And no one would have
Forgiveness.
blamed him if they did.
So this is the list of what to be a good human being, right? It's own your mistakes and
Hmm.
say you're sorry when you're wrong,
Yep.
right? I mean, it's a huge one that's wrong and that people have in our society. Everyone needs to be perfect. So much so that I think the political landscape has gotten that way, where if someone backed uh, a certain person or a certain if you're Republican or you're Democrat, and then something goes wrong inside of that you overlook that, right? Well, no, it's fine. I'm
Mhm.
still a Democrat, or I'm still a Republican. They can't do any wrong because I believe in this person. At some point, you have to say, I was wrong. When
Oh
I
yeah.
voted for this person, I thought this. I was wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. I
Hmm.
don't feel stupid.
Yeah.
You might feel a little conned,
Oh yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
you know, understand, because if you don't and you can make no mistakes, then you're just going to double down on your mistakes. That
Yeah.
snowballs.
And that's one thing I've always been amazed at people in my life who, supporting certain candidates who in the past never would have because of, I'm not supporting this candidate because, you know, they had an extramarital affair. And all of a sudden you have another candidate who not only had an extramarital affair,
Yeah.
flaunts them. And
Yeah.
you're like, so why are you supporting them now? But when you wouldn't support this other candidate
Right. You're
before, just because of the
adjusting.
political party they were in.
You're adjusting your realities to help you.
Not that any of it's okay. Like, not that
No,
extramarital
but
affairs and
but
yeah,
stand for something, and if it goes,
yeah,
if you're your person, I'm the same way. I'm definitely more of a center lined. But
hmm,
here's the thing: does it make me a Democrat liberal because I support LGBTQ rights? Because I support women's rights and equal pay for women. And I think we should have a sensible immigration policy that allows families to come in, and I don't mean shut the border. I mean open the border. I'm saying somebody somewhere smarter than I am that can come up with something. I don't
yeah,
think just not letting anyone in is the same is the right. I don't think just letting everyone in. Like there's got to be something sensible, and so you don't just need to be one way or the other.
hmm,
And I'm towards the middle. But does that make me? I hope it doesn't make me a liberal Democrat because I care about LGBTQ people. I hope all Americans love all
yeah,
Americans. What is it?
yeah,
And I feel like, well, you're a liberal Democrat. Why? Because I don't. I mean, maybe I am. I don't know. It always depended on when I grew up. It always depended on the candidate, right?
yeah.
Like
Well, you and
what's
I
the
are
better
just a
of the
bunch
two
of
candidates? But now it's people that it doesn't matter who, if they're wearing your jersey, your team, they can do no wrong. And it's just,
yeah. When you talk about, are you a Democrat? Are you, you're a person. You're a human being who, we can't put ourselves in these categories necessarily. I know a lot of people listening to this will say, "Oh, you two are just left coast liberal elites who work in the entertainment
sure.
industry," and yes, we do live on the West Coast. We live in two very
Yeah,
liberal states.
all
We
those
do
things,
work in the entertainment.
some of those
It
things are true,
doesn't
but
make us in
yeah,
this box. I mean, I
to
am a
do the
flaming
best
liberal, but
candidate. No, but I want to get the best candidate. And sometimes the best candidate isn't a Democrat. Sometimes it's a Republican.
yeah,
And sometimes the best candidate, if you're a Republican, could be a Democrat. And that used to be okay. And now it's not. It's everyone's got their tent poles and their flags. And they don't, I want to get to a point where we're not still arguing about women's rights. We're not still arguing about gay marriage. We're not
hmm,
still freaking out about trans. Like, let's move on to that, past that, and on to stuff that matters, right? Like, let's take care of our vets when they come home. Let's have mental health.
hmm,
Better mental health. The suicide rate amongst vets is ridiculous. So
yep,
don't say I
yep,
support the troops, but then vote against people who cut funding for the veterans. Like,
yeah,
let's get rid of the noise. Let's let
yep.
society flatten itself out and balance itself, and then let's just focus on the things that actually matter.
I agree. I agree. With
But
that, what do you all think?
yes, comment down below. I want to summarize what we were talking about with what does it mean to be a good human being. Let's come up with some bullet points. I said knowing when to say you're wrong and to say you're sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Being aware of the people around you and their feelings. Some may call it empathetic, but I think it's empathetic. I think it's bigger than that. I think it's being visually and physically and emotionally aware of what's going on around you.
hmm,
And to be a good human being is to be aware of what's going on and choosing to do that. And I think it's understanding people's feelings around you and changing your actions to do that.
Yep.
And I'd like to think we're both sensitive to that, being big people in a world where we stand out, and makes us more empathetic to that. But what is it? What else is there? What is some of the things we talked about there, that to be a good human being, care about each other. I always end the shows with, care about each other, care about your environment, and always care about yourself. And those are the top three things that I think are important to be a good human being. You can say, what is it to be a man? Well, that's what it is to be a man. It's the same to be as a woman. It's to say you're sorry, admit when you're wrong, be a good person, pay attention to the people's feelings around you. Don't harvest the hate. Don't dam up your feelings, and just be the best version of you that you can be.
Yep.
There's a line in the movie that I starred in, Wade in the Water, and I quoted the other day, and my partner called me on it. She's like, that's from your movie. I said, yeah, but it's still a good line. And he says, I want to be a good person. Right. And like, we're not always successful in being a good person, right? We might hurt someone's feelings unknowingly. But if your goal is to be a good person, that's what I think is being a man. And that's what I think is being a woman. And then in the end, it's just what is to be a good human. And we can discuss this in future episodes too,
Tom, you're such a Hollywood liberal elite. Oh my gosh.
If people really know me, it's, I just care about people. You can label me whatever you want. I care about people. Matter of fact, if you're calling me not you, but if you're calling me a liberal, elite, all that, you're doing that because I'm saying I care about people. I think that says more about you than it says about me.
Unfortunately,
I think we should all care about each other. I think we are all on this planet together, and it's utter chaos in where we live and how we live, and this planet spinning around other planets around a sun that is, shooting through a galaxy. It's all chaos, and we need to be there for each other. And however you decide to put me in a box because I care about other people, strangers, people I know, people I love, people I've never met, I just call me what you want. I care about people, and I think we all should.
I think that's a great place to
leave
ask the listeners to let us know what you think. And
yeah. And look, we probably said some things wrong or came out the wrong wording. I'm sure it's okay. Like we have to talk about this, right? I'm not always I don't always have the right words coming to me instantly, right? I'm not a professional podcaster. I'm just a human being here. And I like to do this, but in order to have this space, Andy, for both of us to be able to say these things, we can't be afraid of missaying something. So,
we can't be afraid of being politely corrected about terminology and things like that's one thing I've had to learn, like from my friends, like, oh, it's okay. Like they come to me loving, like, hey, just so you know, like you said, when you use that term, or hey, actually it's this, not that, just so you know for future reference. Yeah. That's fine. I want to learn.
You don't throw your hands and be like, I can't call it a master bedroom. It's like, no, we're just asking you to understand where that term comes, and now it's primary.
Yeah.
Like,
the primary.
Why are you so angry? Why are you so angry? Accept these things. Want to be better. Want to be better.
Yep.
So, well, Andy, it's always a pleasure. This was some intense stuff, but I enjoyed talking and going through this. And I'm sure this stuff will come up in future episodes, and we can talk about it. But I feel like we've kind of narrowed down that, being a man, being a woman, it all comes down to just being a human.
Exactly.
So,
love it. All
right. Well, hey, thank you for everyone watching and everyone listening. We appreciate it. Please like us on Spotify, subscribe. Same thing with YouTube. We're going to start getting this going. We're going to hopefully start getting some nice, see, the words don't always come to me. Sponsors, we get some nice sponsors in here, and we're going to be knocking these episodes out. So thank you guys all very much. And as I always say, please take care of your planet and everything around you. Take care of the people around you, and always put your face mask on first. Take care of yourself. I am Tommy Nicholson for Big Dude Energy.
I'm Andy Neal.
We'll see you next time. Willie, play us out, baby.